Welcome to Marketing Mistakes and How to Avoid Them. I'm Stacy Jones, the founder of influencer marketing and branded content agency Hollywood Branded. This podcast provides brand marketers a learning platform for top experts to share their insights and knowledge on topics which make a direct impact on your business today. While it is impossible to be well versed on every topic and strategy that can improve bottom line results, my goal is to help you avoid making costly mistakes of time, energy, or money, whether you are doing a DIY approach or hiring an expert to help. Let's begin today's discussion.
Welcome to Marketing Mistakes and How to Avoid Them. Here's your host, Stacy Jones.
Welcome to Marketing Mistakes and How to Avoid Them. I'm Stacy Jones. I'm so happy to be here with you all today, and I want to give a very warm welcome to our guest, Mark Donnigan, the Vice President of Marketing at Beamer. Beamer is a global video software technology leader, for whom Mark leads corporate and product marketing, including growth initiatives, digital, PR, and events, with an eye focused on revenue achievement. And he's doing a lot of things right, as his team's work has resulted in a 4-time increase in industry engagement metrics, a 2-time increase in growth in marketing qualified leads, and they've obtained customer acquisition costs significantly lower than the industry average. Mark has that rare mind of both a creative and systems thinker, and he's worked in early and growth stage startups in the segments of high technology, software, and software as a service, and both consumer electronic, hardware, and services brands. Today, we're going to talk about how successful B2B brands are standing out from competition and driving sales through marketing approaches and strategies. We'll learn what's worked from Mark's experience, what could be avoided, and how some are missing the mark. Mark, welcome.
Thank you.
Why don't we start off and have you share with our listeners a little bit more about what got you to where you are here? Because you have an interesting background to get into marketing.
I have a very interesting background. So I won't bore with all of the details, but the trajectory of my career, when people say, what do you do? Or who are you? The usual question, right? Of course, it's easy to say, oh, I run marketing or whatever, but that's really a very incomplete answer. I call myself a business builder, and what that means specifically and how it follows kind of the trajectory of my career and just my, what I've done professionally is that I've always been drawn to companies and products and, markets where there's the opportunity to build something that's new or to really enact significant change, so maybe a legacy market that's, undergoing some radical shift. And so in that context, I kind of came up through the sales side, not kind of, I did. I started out in sales and then, as I progressed and began to lead sales teams, et cetera, marketing was always a component. A lot of times it was because, maybe we were a smaller company, we were a smaller organization, or I just felt like, that I maybe had some insights and was able to go off and build some assets or to do something that my sellers needed. And so even when I had kind of a full-time, head of sales hat on, just as an example, I was always, working very closely with marketing. So whether I formally had a sales and marketing title or not. And so that's my connection to marketing. And a lot of that just comes because, I found that messaging is so critical. And so just as, I was working with my sellers early on and, we would spend so much time just on positioning and understanding, again, some of this is block and tackling of sales, right? It's just understanding what are the needs of the client, what's the needs of the customer, and how can we speak to that in such a way that they're going to buy our product over the other product or solution. So that just put me on this path. And as I was able to get involved in other interesting companies and do things, that were kind of more around corporate strategy and business development, maybe a little bit less directly sort of responsible for a number, but very much responsible for success of the organization. That just lined me up perfect to take on then a full-time, official vice president of marketing role. But I definitely am in some ways an atypical vice president of marketing, which I hope that we can get into, some of the ideas that I've given you to talk about, because I think some of the viewers will agree and some will probably not agree. So, which will be fun.
Well, I think it's so interesting, and we will absolutely get into all of that. I think it's so interesting, though, with our world now, with more and more companies trying to position themselves where sales and marketing truly is aligned, because that's where success is found.
That's right. That's right.
And so with what you're doing, why don't you share and pull back the curtains a little bit? I mean, your team has had some phenomenal success in making some magic happen where you're getting a lot of customer acquisition at a lower price point by using some of your magic sauce.
Yeah. So first of all, just so that everybody understands the context, because, I'm sure your viewers come from a wide range of markets and business model types, et cetera. So it's B2C, B2B. So I've spent really my entire career in B2B, even though I have worked in, you might say kind of B2B to C, where for a period of time, we were selling physical products to retail stores in the music business, who were then, of course, selling like guitar amplifiers and PA equipment and recording studio equipment to obviously a consumer. But really everything that, I've learned and comes from that B2B, doing business with another business. But the first comment that I'll make is that there really is no such thing as B2B or B2C. There's H to H, there's really just human to human. And this is, one of the things that even not too long ago, I had to really come around to really understand what that meant, because I found even in my own thinking, I would kind of fall into this, oh, that's a B2C strategy. I'm B2B, so that's not going to work for me, or I'm going to completely ignore that. Or, it's almost like I just had these sort of blinders up. And as complicated as like the sales process is that I am in now, where we have a multi-year sales process, it's not uncommon for there to be 25 decision makers. And the way that the B2B process works today, it used to be you always were looking for the buyer, and there generally was one person who ultimately would make the decision. The B2B sales process has always been somewhat fragmented. There was kind of a team of folks, but there was always one. It's my belief that in at least the markets that we're in, and I think in a lot of industries, that's not even the case anymore. They're literally any member of, in our case now, and not everybody has as fragmented a process, but, up to 25 people, even somebody who's not connected in any way to the budget has power that they can kill the deal. So how do you get a sale closed in an environment like that? And this is where the H to H, the human to human, where at the end of the day, you have people who are doing business with people. And this is where a lot of my strategies that I think we'll talk about have come from, is just how do you get in front of people so that even that quote unquote least significant person, but who has a say, who very well could kill the deal or certainly could slow a deal down, says, you know what, I like these people. And you know what, I actually think their product's pretty good. Hey, I think we should take a look at it, but it's your decision. Okay. To get that is in some cases what we're looking for, because the opposite response, well, I don't know about it, I'm not sure, I think we can do, and all of a sudden you have a whole deal, $1 million deal that gets turned sideways because of that. So the first thing is this H to H. I think that is just absolutely essential. And if you approach marketing that way, it actually simplifies things a lot.
And so with that approach, is it that you are harnessing inbound marketing to try to do education mainly, so that you're not trying to just do a mass canvas and you're doing top of the funnel and you're creating something that's more mid funnel before you're getting down to that true buyer? Or how are you approaching?
Yeah. So, I think again, everybody's environment is different, I know that there are some sales processes that are able to be pretty tightly defined in a funnel where you can pretty clearly say, hey, we have step 1 through 8. And, yeah, there's a few steps that you might be able to skip or they can go out of order, but pretty much, these are steps and you have to complete them or else the deal's not going to happen.
Mm.
Um, for our experience, we certainly have gates. I think a more helpful way to think about it, that I found anyway,
Mhm.
is to think in terms of gates, not so much like a funnel or steps. Because what happens is if we define the marketing process as a funnel and it's steps 1 through 8, right?
Mhm.
Then you end up building processes to address a step. And the problem is that we are not in control. And that's one of the things that marketers have to learn today, and recognize. And it's humbling, right? Because, I like being in control. I don't know about you, Stacy, but I kind of like being in control. But we are not. The buyer, the customer's in control. And the buyer is going to enter our funnel wherever, they well please.
Yeah.
They are going to interact with us as they please. And the days of the vendor being able to, sort of force everybody, or literally force everybody into a process like, well, let me set up a call with you first, and you're going to talk to this person, and then we're going to qualify you, and then you're going to go if someone's still executing that playbook, they're losing.
Yeah.
I don't, that sounds kind of harsh, but it's a reality. They may not know they're losing, but they're losing.
Mhm.
So, what I like to think of is in terms of gates, and
Mhm.
now these gates. Now, let me talk about my process. So we have we have a software product. It's not a SaaS solution, so it's something that our customer has to take and then integrate into a workflow. So it
Mhm.
requires engineering on their side.
Mhm.
The very first gate that we have to clear is a validation that our process does what it does. That our product does what it does, that our
Yeah.
software basically works the way we say it will. Now, how we get to that can sometimes be a very direct path. We can have effectively maybe 1 or 2 meetings. There's a phone call with a certain set of people, and we generally always know who those people need to be. And then they say, great, let's get a software evaluation license agreement in place, and send us the software. We'll run it through our tests. We'll ask you if we need help, and then we'll give you an answer, and then we know from there, what happens.
Yeah.
But that's a gate, for example, in our process. And so, for the listeners, for the viewers, everybody, you can already think in terms of, okay, we have, maybe 2 gates, maybe 3 gates, maybe 6 gates. If it's a highly regulated market, there's going to be more perhaps. Maybe you only have 1 gate. But the point is you have a gate. And then what I have done is oriented then the marketing function and the sales support function around these gates. So if I know, for example, in my business that the first gate is performance. So one of the things that we focus very heavily on, one of our main selling value props, is our software performance. And it's very important for these very, very large services, where it could literally mean half as many computers
Sure.
running on like AWS. And that's a very big deal because you're paying in some cases millions of dollars to run these large computing centers. So therefore I will produce content, or we will produce specific studies, provide data, provide, I am a little bit negative on white papers, but I am not negative on the fact that I'm negative on white papers as being like the magic vehicle that, hey, let me send you my 25-page white paper so you can see how great my product is. absolutely worthless, at least in our business. But where there is value is to have a well-written technical document that contains the information, the answers to the questions that I know need to be answered at that gate. And so that's what we've really focused on. So one of the things, Stacy, is that we actually started a podcast ourselves. And our podcast, and we were talking about this before we started recording, is an audio podcast. We actually don't even do video, and yet we talk about video, right? And so you think, wow, that's super weird. But what we have found is that it gave us a very non-intrusive, it gave us a new avenue to speak to our market, for them to see us as thought leaders, for us to interview, in some cases, even our customers. We've had our customers on, we've had our partners on. We're very non-salesy. It is, in fact, only at the very end do we say sponsored by, Beamer Imaging. Obviously people know me, they know our CTO well enough. So it's not that, the industry doesn't know who's putting this on, but it is not a heavy branded thing. This is not a branding exercise. This is not a look how awesome Beamer is. This is a communications vehicle that gives us a touch point so that we can maintain contact with the industry without without just flooding with, ultimately kind of, irrelevant or information that they don't need or don't even want.
No, and you're able to establish your expertise in the field while doing so, and create content that can be repurposed in so many different ways to keep on ticking.
And by the way, isn't this exactly your strategy?
It is. It is.
So it's, and we don't have to spend time building up the value of a podcast, but at least in our industry, and given that we're in the video, in the video niche, et cetera, it was slightly counterintuitive. Now, interestingly enough, over the last, our podcast has been going for a little over a year, and in fact, we just put out our 40th episode, which, considering that that's a run rate of, about one every 10 to 12 days, was, or I guess, now I guess it was, we're about every couple of weeks. We're almost a year and a half old, but anyway, it's, it's really doing well, and it's now getting copied. So others like, hey, we need a podcast too, but it's great. But it's not a bad thing. And it just shows that, that communications mechanism is resonating.
Right. And there's a need for the actual content.
That's right.
If it's being
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. I think, and I stated this earlier, but I just can't say it enough. The client is in control today. The customer's in control. And so, part of our job as marketers is to understand what their needs are, and then meet those. Obviously it's our job as a commercial company, to bring a product, but as marketers, it's our job too, to do the same.
100%. So you came to this podcast more prepared than anyone I've ever met. So,
really?
Oh yeah. I mean, listeners,
that outline took 10 minutes. So
yeah, just want you all know, Mark sent over an outline. There's bullets. There's these are the big ideas. And I want to make sure you have the platform to get across some of those big ideas. And, one of the things that you started off was, an explanation and understanding of how you can win at B2B marketing or H to H marketing.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? And become the king. You literally wrote out, you become the king.
Become the king. Yeah, that's what we all want, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, let's dive in there. How do you do it? How do you become the king or the queen of your category? That's right.
King or queen, both completely, absolutely valid. So there's a concept that is not completely new, and I want to give credit where credit's due. And there's many people who developed this. So again, if someone's listening and saying, "Oh, but there's this other person who's done a lot of work in the area," I know there are, and either I just don't know about them, but Christopher Lochhead is is one that he wrote a book called Play Bigger with some of his partners. So he has some co-authors as well. But Play Bigger came out in like 2016, if I remember correctly. And he defined this process called category design. And category design is really simple to understand. And, you know, I think almost, I'll start with an example and then I'll explain, you know, what it is and then just the high level steps as to how you execute it. So let's think about the Apple iPod. Now, you know, I think everybody, you know, is familiar. And nowadays, I don't know. I think Apple, do they even have an iPod now? I don't know. The iPod's kind of the iPhone, but we all remember when the iPod was, everybody had an iPod, right? And what's interesting is I think most people are well aware that Apple was not the creator of the MP3 player. They were not the creator of this category called, you know, portable music player, which was the category that, you know, they dominated. But at the height, Christmas of 2016. I'm sorry, 2006, Christmas 2006. So this is really the height. The iPhone, remember, just came out in 2007. And so, you know, iPods were still, you know, very big and people were buying them through like maybe 2010, 2011, maybe 2012. But 2006 was really the height of it. Apple during that Christmas season had 72% of the entire market. 72%. Every single music player sold, the iPod consisted of 72%. Now, do you remember Microsoft's solution?
Oh,
do you remember their player?
I remember there, and I repped Philips time, so I had an MP3.
And Philips had Philips had a line.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And a lot of lines, and
there were a lot.
And all of a sudden, everyone just took a step back and ran. They ran. They ran. They're like, we can't.
We can't compete. Can't compete. Well, okay. So Microsoft came, you know, Microsoft said, hey, you know, we can compete here. And they came out with a product called the Zune. And the Zune, you know, I should have looked this up. I want to say maybe it came out in like 2001, 2002, somewhere in there. I may be off. But anyway, so the Zune so Microsoft came out with the Zune, right? Or actually, maybe it was even 2003, 2004. Now that I think about it, it wouldn't have been 2000. Anyway, forget the timetable. The point is Microsoft came out, and let's go back to Christmas season 2006. Apple has 72% of the market. Microsoft finished with a resounding 2.8% of the market. 2.8. And this is Microsoft. And by the way, the Zune, by all rights, had features that the iPod didn't. You know, you could argue various points. Was it better? Was it, you know, but the point is that this was not a bad product. And of course, we all can think of dozens, hundreds of examples of where you can look at a market and you can say there was a better product, but it lost, you know, and why is that? And that's because of category design. And what it comes down to is when Steve Jobs announced the iPod, and in all the early advertising, what did he do? Did he hold it up and say, ladies and gentlemen, I am so happy to announce and to reveal for the first time ever, Apple's MP3 player? No, he held it up. He said, 1,000 songs in your pocket. 1,000 songs in your pocket. Now, you think about, you know, going back then, you know, you had portable CD players, you know, which you wouldn't exactly carry around like 1,000 CDs. That'd be crazy. You had, you know, of course, 1,000 songs. That's not 1,000 CDs, but, you know, 100 CDs, let's say. So what did he do by saying 1,000 songs in your pocket? He defined a problem, first of all. So the problem was, hey, I want to carry more music with me. You know, like I want to carry my whole library. Like I don't want to just carry like 2 or 3 CDs and have to, you know, manually change them or, you know, or whatever, you know, or a couple cassette tapes like the Walkman, you know, going back 10 years earlier. You I want to carry around my music library. Okay, that was a practical problem. So category design, and the message here is that he was not marketing, and Apple did not market a MP3 player, a cooler, slicker, neater, whatever, music player, MP3 player, whatever. It was 1,000 songs in your pocket. And so the first step to category design is to define a tangible problem. And, it's easy to, sometimes if we're already in kind of a well-established market, to think, well, like everybody already knows what we do, right? But it's in my experience that with very, very few exceptions, you can find something that you can define, you can put a label on that is a unique twist or a unique presentation that will cause someone to lean forward, where previously they're just hearing all these marketing messages and they're just going in one ear and out the other.
Right.
Marketing
and tactics. Tactics too.
Exactly.
This works for service businesses as well.
100%. 100%. In fact, service businesses, I think almost this is in some ways easier to do, because, you can say, a couple of years ago, I had a roof put on my house, right? And so I had, a parade of roofers come through to give me quotes and everything. And the roofer that I ended up hiring, it's not that he really has done this exercise, but you know what? He was more than just a roofer who would bring a crew out and replace the tiles on my roof. He explained, he made it seem like he was a fabricator, who was going to deliver a different roof than the next company. And yet reality was, who knows, maybe it's even the same guys. I don't know, like you don't really know how some of this stuff works. So the first is you define a tangible problem. The second, and this is really, really critical for category design, is that you name the problem. And you have to name it, but you have to be sure to put your solution at the center. So, what's interesting, going back to the Apple iPod example, is 1,000 songs in your pocket. Now you say, but that's not really naming a problem, but it is, if you think about it.
You're tethered to your music otherwise.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden now, like 1,000, wow, that's 1,000 songs. Like, and most people are not walking around thinking, oh, my library consists of 983 songs and I just bought a new album. So now it's, like they're not thinking that way, but they're thinking like, oh, that's a lot of music. Mm-hmm. Wow. If I'm in the mood for rock, if I'm in the mood for country and for pop, I probably could have that in my pocket. And then now whatever I'm in the mood for, I can listen to it. See? And so you define it. And then now, how does someone like Microsoft or Philips or, or the Rio or any of those early MP3, guess what? They were all marketing by capacity, one gig, 256 megs, you remember, right? How they're measured. And the consumer's just sort of looking there like, I don't know, which one should I get? I don't know. This one's a little $10 more. I guess it's better. Okay, I'll buy that one. And then Apple comes in and they're like double the price or even triple the price, but they say 1,000 songs in your pocket. And you're like, of course, that's what I want. So the first step, define tangible problem. The second is name the problem, but find a way to put your solution at the center of it. Mm-hmm. And this requires a lot of work. I mean, this is not, as we can see, it's easy to just sort of talk through, but this is what's making marketing so fun today, in my opinion. And then the third step, and again, there's all these micro steps that are part of this, but the third is whenever you are communicating with the industry, you're communicating with your customers, you are talking on your website, you are sending out email communication, any external communication, press releases, trade show booths, whatever, you're always referring to your company and your product wherever feasible in light of the category. Mm-hmm. Now, it could mean that you're literally calling yourself, the founder of, the category. but that's kind of, nobody likes a company who just talks about themselves. So that's kind of the weakest way to do it. But, it's better than just sort of saying, what do you do? Oh, we make pipe fitting machines for, like, okay, like you and 1,800 other pipe fitting machine manufacturers, or whatever. So by doing this, what ends up happening is that you are carving out a space where now in time, and if you do your job well, in time, the industry will begin to refer to you as the basis of comparison anytime they look at a competitor. Mm-hmm. So the beautiful thing is that you can think now like a little more modern day example, and let's just stay with Apple, the iPhone. Okay, so Apple simply took their iPod dominance, and what did they do? They now are the category king of smartphones. Now, I know that, some will say, yeah, but, there's some manufacturers who sold more unit quantity. But when you look at what really matters, dollars, profit, revenue, Apple absolutely trounces, absolutely just decimates the nearest competitor in the smartphone category. And why is that? There isn't a soul that doesn't walk in to look at a new Samsung, what the new Q20, S20, whatever the new phone is, who doesn't have on their mind the iPhone 11. Okay, or look at some other phone, and what are they comparing it to? The iPhone 11, the new, whatever the new iPhone is, whatever. And so this is the key to category design and then becoming the king. And the message is, and the reason why I love especially the iPod example and throwing out those numbers, is that going back to the book Play Bigger and Christopher Lochhead and the research that he and his partners put into this, they found that pretty universally, regardless of industry, the category king takes upwards of 76% of the entire revenue of the whole sector. Now, if that doesn't just blow your mind, and so what that means is that if we as marketers are playing to win, there really is no choice but to become a category king. Now, someone's going to say, but what do you do? Not everybody can be the king. And I'm in a space where okay, I'm in the CRM market and there's Salesforce. Like, you're telling me I need to be bigger than Salesforce. Of course not. But you know what? What about going in and saying, we are going to target our CRM, both in terms of product capabilities, but market position. We're going to define a problem for law firms. And we're going to become the category king of CRM in this particular area, so that if you are a law firm, we have 75% of the entire legal market. Is that an interesting business to you? Yeah. And I think most of us would say, yeah.
I'll take it.
Yeah, I'll take it. Exactly. So this is this is something that I think chief executives, CMOs, executive leadership teams, founders, it doesn't have to be only if you're in a startup. In fact, I think it's certainly applicable if you're starting kind of from scratch and you're building a business from scratch, like a startup, you're in a new market. But if you're an established market, it's not too late to really think very carefully about how you can build a category that you can dominate and you can win.
Okay, that's awesome. That's really good insight. Yeah. Okay. So taking that a step further, the next area that you wanted to dive into was all about demand generation marketing.
Growth hacking.
Yes. Because you found your niche. You are going to be it. You are the CRM for law.
Yep.
All things. So now what are you going to do to actually level that up?
Yeah. So, one of my observations is that, and I am not, negative sort of the growth hacking. It's become a whole sector, right? A whole category. There's conferences. There's SaaS platforms all around growth. Growth hacking and demand generation marketing.
Mhm.
But my strong belief is that all marketing today is demand generation. That unless you're blessed to work for Coca-Cola, and God bless you, or American Express, or United Airlines, or so, literally a Fortune 100, the brand building exercise is just not where marketers should be spending their time and attention. The market's too noisy. There's just too much competition for attention.
Mm-hmm.
And so all marketing is demand generation. Now, what's interesting about that is that this gets then into the whole discussion of like ROI and measuring ROI. So demand generation on one hand is awesome because the idea is, hey, we're investing $1 and we're getting $2 back. We're generating demand. It's very measurable. It's very quantifiable. We know if our team is doing their job or not. We've set out these very clear KPIs, and that's all good. And those things are needed. And you do need to know where you've been so you know where you're going, and all that. So this is not to say I'm not a marketing leader that doesn't believe in measurement. Not at all. But there's a big difference between between optimizing only for ROI and designing for ROI. So I like to say that not everything can be measured for ROI, but everything should be designed for ROI. And so when I'm talking about demand generation cutting across the entire marketing organization, what I'm really referring to is that the entire marketing team, however big or small that is, whether it's one person working with maybe an agency or a couple outsourcers, whether it's 2 or 3 people, or whether it's 20 or 30 or 50 or 60 or whatever, that demand generation cuts across everything. So if you are if you're in a bigger org and your function really is more around content development, then it's incumbent that as you're writing even those blog posts, that are not overtly salesy, that you have a very clear strategy or a picture as to how does this fit into how we drive demand, whatever that looks like. It might be some sort of direct response. That's of course the most kind of direct way, right? But if it's B2B, it's not direct response. I mean, you just don't call it and go, yeah, I'm ready to license that software for $1 million a year, like that. That's not the sales process. Sure. So, but again, we talked in terms of those gates. And so there, the demand generation is more driving towards what gate am I, again, to use the idea of if I'm writing content, if I'm a content writer, how is this serving to drive someone to clear, the second gate in our process, just as an example. This, of course, puts a new demand, what I found on marketers, because now, obviously, you have to be, being good at your craft is just table stakes. But now you have to actually understand the ecosystem. You need to understand what's the environment that our buyers are in. What are the trends? What's happening in our industry that I should be speaking to, that maybe our product addresses, but maybe not. But by speaking to it, we're showing that we understand. We're kind of good citizens of the industry. Mm-hmm. And so this whole notion, it's maybe slightly ethereal, and everybody's environment and the way that, their teams are built, of course, will will mean that, integrating demand generation through the entire marketing organization might be very cut and dried. It may really be how it works today. But I've observed, especially in SaaS companies, that, there tends to be like the demand generation team, and all of marketing is demand generation. That's really the point that I want to make.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And it all is driving to basically what you're talking about, cornerstone content, that you have something that you're building, and every building block, every blog, every podcast is helping move in the direction of getting people actually to that cornerstone, to get them through that gate and to start having them contact you, ask more questions, or continuing opening gates.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And then you had a take in regards to how the CMO is a role that's essential. And I think you phrased it as a business conductor to work in tandem with the CEO and the product team and your sales team and all these others. I mean, you are literally orchestrating and building and driving and making sure that not only do the wheels not fall off the bus, but that the bus is going in the right direction with the entire rest of the fleet that you have. I love the word conductor, and I'm a musician, so maybe that's where it comes from. It is more exciting than ever to be a CMO or marketing head or VP of marketing, whatever the title, but someone who's carrying the primary responsibility for marketing leadership and, marketing direction for a company. Today is like the best time. I mean, it really is. And yet it's super interesting to me that, and I don't know, if this is sort of industry specific or if the trend is getting better, but certainly a lot's been written about how the tenure of CMOs is shorter than almost anybody in the C-suite. And, I think I saw not too long ago, like kind of 18 months, 20 months is kind of an average tenure, which is like not good, if that's really true. And I can't recall if that was an industry specific or, where that number came from. But the point is that, it is well known that, the CMO chair is kind of perpetually rotating. And the reason why I say that this is the most exciting time, to actually be sitting in that seat, and I have a little bit of a theory, and of course I have every organization is different, people are different. So, in no way am I trying to label why maybe someone didn't last long in a role or whatnot. But I have a theory that I think is founded. And that is that executing and I like to call it the, kind of the business school playbook, which 15 years ago, 10 years ago, maybe even 7 or 8 years ago was the role. You build a team, there's a management function of just making sure, like you said, the wheels aren't falling off the bus, that every department is doing their job, that, and interfacing with the executive management. If you're in a public company, then of course there's probably there's a strong public facing persona to the role and all that kind of stuff. But it's sort of a little bit cosmetic. I'll probably get totally shot at by somebody for saying that, but bear with me is what I'm explaining. It's a little bit cosmetic. You had the product head who ultimately was designing and is driving the product direction. And then maybe product marketing reported the CMO, maybe not, kind of depending on the organization, if it's engineering driven or whatnot, and again, there's kind of all these silos. Today's CMO is in an incredible position where they're empowered by the chief executive to work cross-functionally across product, across sales, not necessarily leading sales, although maybe in some organizations, the CMO also has primary revenue responsibility or is ultimately leading the sales function, but certainly working in very close tandem with the sales leader and working obviously in very close tandem and coordination with the chief executive and the executive team to really chart the entire course
of this demand generation engine, of this powerful force that is being built, that, as we said earlier, buyers no longer are willing, to come into our process like, hey, we have step one. That's where you start.
Yeah.
Sorry, start there. And the buyer says, no, I like step 7. That's where I'm at, and the CMO is in this incredible position to look at the industry, look at the inflections in the market, look at inflections in the business climate, technologies that are relevant, to them, to their industry, to their product, to whatever their core business is, and to really be the conductor of all of this. And it's uber exciting for for someone to be sitting in that role, who really is a builder, and who is interested in kind of doing more than just hiring the next better agency or negotiating the next better deal, or so it's my strong feeling and observation that I think what we're going to start seeing, and I believe we're already seeing, is a different CMOs coming into the role from a more diverse background, maybe even from backgrounds that were not through typical marketing progressions. Not to say that they aren't marketers. They need to be marketers. The other thing that's also interesting in this is that I think there was a role in the past, or a place for somebody who legitimately was leading this big marketing organization, maybe in charge of spending 50 million, 100 million, 200 million dollars a year, huge budgets, right? Both on, advertising spend and whatnot, but who actually had never really been practitioners themselves. And now you're seeing, especially from where I sit in technology, I can't really think of any CMO who isn't a serious practitioner. Yeah, it doesn't mean they do all jobs well, but who probably came up in or has just grown their individual capability to be able to be an excellent writer, be a very good presenter, have a very strong strategic sense, understand business strategy, be able to be an analyst, be able to step back and say, hey, is this the right direction? Are we going in the right direction? Rather than kind of saying, hey, you guys tell me what you want to do and I'll build a campaign for it, which previously was kind of how a lot of the orgs functioned, right?
Yeah, it's true. No, it's 100% true. And the fact is, if you're going to be a leader in today's climate, we all have so much access to education, right? There's so much out there that you can grab onto, and you need to have someone at a company who's a leader, who's able to inhale some of that education, who's driven to educate themselves, but then also someone who is that special beast, who is able to light people up and get them to do their jobs while you still have an understanding of what they're doing. And that's the magic.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's so true, and there is magic there, because it's easy to talk about, in a conversation like this. It's very different to, hang up on this call and then go execute. But I think you can feel even, my enthusiasm, and, you started out by giving kind of a bit of a nod to, my slightly unconventional, sort of parachuting into we're not a large company, so I'm not trying to over-represent, the team or the scope of what I'm working on today, but, to certainly parachute in, we have serious investors and we're doing some good work. And, I did come a little bit non-conventionally into a head of marketing role. And yet, it's one of those cool things about careers, right? If you sat down to design it, you wouldn't design it, but then, necessarily the way it happened. And yet when you look back, you say it happened perfectly. you know? And so just where, you know, where we are today in terms of what the needs of the market are, and given, you know, given my, you know, personal progression and things that motivate me, it's like, it's lining up beautifully. So.
Well, Mark, you are absolutely the conductor of your own symphony. So congratulations on that.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And,
Yes.
and, you know, Stacy, thanks so much for inviting me on. This is really, really amazing, and keep up the good work as well.
Thank you.
I enjoy, you know, the diversity of the interviews that you do is, you know, is really great.
Well, anything that interests me, you know, so I'm one of those people who's very educational based.
Yes.
And so if there's a topic that sounds interesting that could potentially benefit my company or the clients I work with, I am very eager to just dive in and explore it a little bit more.
It's awesome. I'm the same way. I'm exactly the same way. So
what is your podcast about?
So it's called The Video Insiders, and it's extremely niche. So the industry that I'm in at the moment is video technology, and we actually, if you watch Netflix, you are most likely, depending on the device you're watching on, watching our software. We do what's called video encoding, and so if you think of it this way, you know, producing a high quality video, you can, you know, you don't even have to be technical to kind of, you know, get the understanding that the files are like really huge to capture the quality, and to stream over the internet, you know, as awesome as, you know, all of our devices are and as fast as the internet is, it's still much slower, as in like 100 times less bandwidth than what these, you know, the pristine full quality is that gets captured. So our software is the software and video encoders take this really large file, make it nice and small so it can stream, but preserve as much of the original quality as possible. And that's what we do. So, so the Video Insiders, we interview, like for example, the Super Bowl just happened, and the Super Bowl was a really big event in streaming video because it was broadcast, it was streamed in 4K, so very high resolution, and also with a technology called HDR, high dynamic range, which when you see, again, you know, what's beautiful about some of this stuff is you don't have to understand anything technically. You just see it and say, that looks awesome. That looks better. And that's exactly HDR. So we just did an interview with the broadcast consultant who designed the entire workflow end to end, from the camera through all the production chain, all the way to distribution, you know, on your smart TV, for example. So that's what we do.
Awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah.
But you don't do it on video.
No. So it's funny. We don't do it on video. And of course, on one hand, it's like, wait a second, it's a video show on audio. Like that totally doesn't make sense. Believe it or not, it's a little bit practical, but more strategic in terms of why we don't do video. You know, the practicality video just introduces that extra level of, you know, production, and then, you know, for us, you know, it's always a little bit of a fight of, you know, again, going back to that authenticity. Like on one hand, you know, like, I mean, you know, I think this is, you know, it's like, I'm clearly not sitting, you know, in a small studio apartment somewhere, you know, so it's like, you know, but is this professional? Does it present in the way that, you know, that we might want it to or need it to? And so that all those things come up, right, when you're talking video, and when you're talking audio, it's a heck of a lot easier, you know, so so we've decided to do that, but the practical, so that's kind of just the you know, a little more, you know, it's just a decision, right? But practically, we've had a lot of people say they love it because on commutes, in the gym, the audio podcast is kind of preferable, you know. So every time when, you know, I've kind of mentioned like, yeah, we're thinking about doing video, or they're always like, well, that's cool, you know, I might, but you know, it's like, I'm only going to listen to the audio, you know, so
that makes sense. Well, now it's the whole, you have to create it in as many ways as possible so that people can come to you how they want to come, right?
Yeah, and also our objective, our market is very tightly defined. This is not a, I mean, relative to, sort of a public, I mean, it is a public podcast, but,
Mhm.
a broader topic. It's a very small niche market.
Yeah.
And so even though we are, it's not like we think we've reached everybody, not by any stretch, but it's not, we're not monetizing the advertising. I'm not trying to it's for a very different thing. It's a
Yeah.
B2B market strategy. And so it's it's demand, it's demand gen, it fits into the demand generation bucket, but just like, the outline, what we're going to
Yeah.
talk about, I my personal opinion is, and it's backed up with, experience. And, I think there's a lot of other people who are kind of in the marketing world coming alongside and saying, yeah, you're right. The days of looking at marketing as campaigns and as silos and as functional blocks, like, oh, we have our content creation team. Oh, we have our demand gen team. Oh, we have our growth hackers, that are kind of a part of and you have all these functional blocks. There's some organizations that I think, that's still valid, and that way of working, works.
Mhm.
But in startups and fast growth, when you are in very dynamic environments, I like to call it the Glengarry, Glen Ross environment. You just can't approach the world that way.
Right.
And so, in some cases, there's tactics, that need to be implemented for a period of time, and then they shift. And it's not because they didn't work, but, the market has shifted, or where the audience is, or what the industry is thinking about has moved, and if everything's built in these silos or in kind of these functional blocks, like, well, I have my content team, I've got 3 writers, I got to keep busy. So we're cranking out white papers. So nobody's reading them. So, all right, I hope you like your white papers, because, they're not doing anything for you,
Right.
at least in most industries. So today.
Well, Mark, thank you so much. And now for our listeners, and viewers, if they want to find more about you, I know you're on LinkedIn. Can you share a little bit of insight on how they can do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm very easy to find on LinkedIn. Fortunately, my last name is not so common. So, yeah, just search for Mark Donnigan. And I'm sure you can link up in the show notes there,
Yeah.
Stacy, but to my
Yeah.
LinkedIn profile. And really, that's where to find me. I live and breathe and sleep LinkedIn, and it's just a wonderful network, and I have a really strong network there. So I'd love for you to join me.
Perfect. That sounds awesome. And then for all of our listeners today, thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate it. And I look forward to chatting with everyone on our next podcast.